The organ began to play, filling the sanctuary with sound. But to Nora Norris, the music had already stopped. What she heard instead was the rasp of leather against satin, and a voice she didn't recognize cutting through everything she thought she knew. Play alonged. The weight of her grandmother's pearls pressed against her throat as she took one frozen step forward, her fingers tightening around the bouquet of white roses until the stems bit into her palms. She had worked for this moment her entire adult life, climbing out of nothing, proving she belonged, walking toward a man who made her feel like she'd finally made it, toward a life that looked exactly like success should look. But the moment her eyes lifted to Marcus at the altar, his smile sharp and confident and perfect, something deep inside Nora whispered that she was walking toward something else entirely. Something dangerous, something deadly wrong. The man beside her, all silver beard and motorcycle patches and tattoos that told stories she couldn't read, tightened his grip on her arm, not roughly, protectively, like he knew what was waiting for her up there, like he'd come to make sure she never reached it. And in that instant, with the entire church watching and her heart hammering so hard she thought everyone could hear it, Nora Norris realized her dream wedding had just become her only chance to survive. You're absolutely right. Let me rewrite Chapter 1 with a proper cliffhanger ending that leaves the tension unresolved and the danger still present. The leather vest pressed against her bare arm, foreign and rough, completely wrong for this moment. Otto Ross stood beside her like he'd been invited, like he had every right to walk a bride down the aisle, but Nora's mind was screaming that none of this made sense. Her elegant dark curls, pinned perfectly that morning, now felt too tight against her scalp. Her dress, the one she'd saved for over 2 years, suddenly felt like a costume for a play she'd never auditioned for. The guests erupted in confused whispers. Nora caught her mother's face in the third row, eyes wide with shock and something that looked like recognition. Had she seen Otto before? No, that was impossible. Nora forced her feet to keep moving, one white satin heel after another on the burgundy carpet runner, even as her body begged her to run. Marcus stood at the altar, and for the first time since she'd met him 18 months ago at that charity gala, Nora saw his smile falter. It lasted only a second before he recovered, his expression smoothing into concern, but that flicker, that tiny crack in his perfect composure, sent ice through her veins. His eyes weren't on her. They were locked on Otto, and there was something in them she'd never seen before. Something cold and calculating and furious. Otto leaned down, his weathered face close to hers, appearing to offer fatherly reassurance to anyone watching. But his voice was low and urgent, meant only for her. I know you don't know me. I know this seems insane, but I heard your fiancé last night at the bar across from my clubhouse. He wasn't talking about marriage, Nora. He was talking about using you, your connections, your access, your identity. He said, after the wedding, she won't have a choice. The words hit her like a physical blow. Nora's breath caught in her chest, and suddenly she was drowning in memories she'd pushed aside. Marcus insisting she introduce him to her entire professional network within the first 3 months of dating. His anger, carefully controlled but unmistakable, when she wouldn't add him to her bank accounts. The way he'd convinced her that her best friend Shanice was jealous, unsupportive, toxic. How he'd persuaded her to skip her cousin's wedding because we need to focus on us, baby. The locked phone he never let out of his sight. The business trips he wouldn't explain beyond vague mentions of consulting work. She'd told herself it was normal, that successful men had boundaries, that love meant trusting even when things felt off. But standing here now, with Otto's warning hanging in the air between them, all those small moments crashed together into something she could no longer ignore. They were halfway down the aisle now. Otto's biker brothers, 3 of them she counted, stood at the back of the church, silent and respectful but unmistakably dangerous. They weren't making a scene, weren't threatening anyone, but their presence was a wall between her and the exits. No, she realized with sudden clarity, between her and anyone who might try to take her. "Keep walking," Otto murmured. "And listen, I did some digging after what I heard. Your fiancé has used 5 different names in 4 states. Marcus Holloway, Jonathan Price, David Sterling. There are women who went missing after getting involved with him. And yesterday I saw him meeting with men my club has been watching, human traffickers, operating through this city." Nora's knees weakened. Her vision blurred at the edges. Human traffickers. The word ricocheted through her skull, too big, too impossible to attach to the man who'd held her on bad days, who'd proposed on a beach at sunset, who'd cried when she said yes. But even as she tried to reject it, pieces clicked into place. The way Marcus had pushed for a quick wedding, his interest in her passport, her social security card, documents he said they'd need for joint accounts. The strange men who'd shown up at their engagement party, men he'd introduced as old friends, but who'd looked at her like she was merchandise. "Who are you?" Marcus's voice cut through the organ music. He'd stepped down from the altar, his perfect composure cracking further. "This is a private ceremony. You need to leave." Otto stopped walking, forcing Nora to stop with him. They were 10 feet from Marcus now. Close enough that Nora could see the vein pulsing in his temple, the way his hands had clenched into fists at his sides. "I'm someone who knows what you are," Otto said quietly. His voice was steady, but Nora felt the tension coiling through his body like a spring ready to release. Marcus's mask slipped completely. His face twisted into something ugly, something Nora had never seen but somehow recognized from nightmares she didn't remember having. One of the groomsmen, a man Marcus had introduced as his business partner, pulled out his phone, typing rapidly. Otto noticed, his jaw tightening. His brothers at the back shifted position, readying themselves. Otto's voice dropped to barely a whisper, his words meant only for Nora as tears began streaming down her face. "My sister trusted a man like him. He sold her to people who used her until she couldn't take it anymore. She died thinking no one cared enough to save her." His hand tightened